Welcome to SAM Conversation, a program of South Asia Monitor. Today we're going to discuss the recent extended deployment of the Chinese People's Liberation Army right up till Arunachal, and also some intrusions. It's a pleasure to welcome Professor Dr. Ravni Thakur, Professor in Chinese Studies, Head of Department of the East Asian Studies, University of Delhi, Lieutenant General Parminderjeet Singh Pannu. He's seen a lot of the Chinese and the Pakistanis on the line of actual control and the line of control, and dealt with them also. Highly decorated. And we have Iqbal Chand Malhotra, who I cannot help but reiterate, a hound of history. He heads AIM Television, which has been awarded a number of times. I look forward to, I think, an exciting discussion. We'll stick to we'll stick to just 2-minute takes, as many as possible. Now, the Army Chief General Mukund Narwane, he recently said that, well, the PLA has deployed itself till Arunachal, and mildly said that it's a matter of concern. We're seeing what they, and there's nothing to we are quite confident of dealing with any situation. In July, July 2021, they had cameras inside portions which India claims in Ladakh. These watchtowers and posts erected by the Chinese overlook areas held by the Indian Army, somewhat, maybe not like what it was for us in Kailash range. But anyway, the fact remains that in the 13th round of talks, it is again proved that their attempt is to, as usual, lie, be devious, and use all their tricks to extract much more than maybe we should give. One of the intrusions has been at Barahoti, which is in a sector which has not been, which is not contested. And they came in with about 55 horses, and they also destroyed a bridge. I won't dwell any longer. I think let's start. General Pannu.
Colonel Bhat, thank you very much for bringing me over for this discussion. We are basically talking about India and China relationship and the current problems. The relationship has been very good. It started with Hindi-Chini bhai-bhai. But I think internally we were speaking lies within ourselves that we were not so brotherly, and we were trying to bide time only to understand what needs to be done over a period of time. The military was not competent to do anything, nor there was any direction to the military to do anything. And the only thing that we were very certain about is that we had a line in our mind, which was also not a line very prominently given by the British. So there were speculative lines, and we drew a line. And on that line rests the claims on Siachen Glacier. And there is a McMahon line, which was under the circumstances as it is drawn and understood, which we considered as the actual line on which the boundary rests. As far as Barahoti is concerned, these are the areas which were considered as mutually disputed. and therefore both sides decided not to come into this area. And as you know that in this relationship, 22 boundary negotiations have happened, but nothing much could be actually settled between the two. And India and China are the only two countries actually who did not settle as the neighbors of China, other than Bhutan, of course, which is now very quickly settling the dispute. So India is going to be and is the only major player who has a boundary dispute not settled with China. Otherwise, China has settled boundaries with all other countries. And this is with the purpose. They want a sword of Damocles to be hung on the heads of the Indians to make Indians behave in a particular manner. And second thing is that when you talk about a behavior, you talk about certain things that we say overtly and certain things that we do on ground. After all, if excitation is something which we did not want the Chinese to have, but the fact is that they were there. And we were not there at that time, and they drew certain lines which they considered should be a line of actual control. In 1959, it was spoken and written, as people talk about the Chonlai's line that he was talking about. So the point is, the relationship started with different perceptions on the territories itself. Until date, if you do not settle those perceptions on the table, what does a poor soldier do on ground when he has no clear mandate to do anything except to patrol the area that is given to them? And when he patrols the area, the perceptual differences are to be settled by the soldiers on ground, or it is to be settled by the diplomats on the directions of the leadership. And the leadership must sit together and decide not to push the armies around, because if you push the armies around, they will only do one thing: to fight. And that is exactly what has happened. Now the fight is happening. You need to resolve it. And when the fight happens, the next thing that the diplomat has is to contain the damage, to contain escalation, not to allow escalation to happen, because the soldiers don't know how to contain escalation. They will continue to push around till the time the local commanders on ground achieve a tactical objective, which is to their tactical advantage. So as a result, in the shades of gray, it is very difficult for the militaries to operate. And I would also think that the PLA, being a political military, would have a better understanding of the political objectives, and therefore many perceptions come up. The perception of a military commander on ground is to defend the line. The perception of an intermediate commander is to show success in whichever way it comes. And the leaders on top are the ones who actually want to uphold the image of the nation. So at the end of it, when it comes to the highest levels, it is the image of the nation which affects. And any pictures of the soldiers being dragged around and pushed around here and there is used for tarnishing the image of the country, which is not acceptable to the military, which will again get back to make sure that at least the military image is corrected. So this is the realm in which we can have a debate. I suppose this is how my opening remarks are.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you for putting things in perspective, because this is at every stage when we discuss China, it's a complex subject, because there's wheels within wheels, and all kinds of issues that very often contradict each other. Meanwhile, I think, Iqbal, you please take on.
Well, let me put this into perspective, what General Pannu said. Let's go back to 1914, when there was a tripartite conference between India, China, and Tibet on the boundary issue. And the Chinese pulled out, and British India and the Tibetans signed a treaty in 1914. The British did not push the Chinese too hard, even though they were dominating China at that point of time, because they didn't want to damage that lucrative opium trade with China, which was giving the Indian government about 18% of its annual revenue. Now, after 1914, we come to 1954, when the then Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru signed this infamous and wretched treaty called the Panchsheel Treaty of Peace and Cooperation. And there he effectively legitimized the Chinese invasion of Tibet and opened up India to face any number of consequences relating to Chinese and Tibetan claims and quasi-claims on Aksai Chin, on Barahoti, on Arunachal Pradesh. Now, once the Chinese presence in Tibet was legitimized in 1954, they repudiated the 1914 agreement between Tibet and British India because they said that that agreement was signed under duress and the Chinese did not sign it, and therefore that treaty is not binding on them. And they decided to then put forth and make all these absurd claims on what was perceived to be Tibetan territory that extended deep into India. Now, to make matters worse, in 2003, Prime Minister Vajpayee went to China, and with a great expanse of his generosity, he ratified the 1954 Panchsheel Agreement and re-ratified the Chinese presence in Tibet and their claims on the basis of what the Tibetans or some part of Tibetan history perceived the territorial boundaries of Tibet to be. So we have effectively cut off our feet right at the beginning, and we are fighting a losing battle as far as diplomats go and as far as all these claims go in international law. And quite rightly so, as General Pannu said, that the sword of Damocles hangs over our head. Now let's come to the current issue of the transgressions by the Chinese in 2022, 2020 in the Galwan Valley, and the latest transgressions in Arunachal Pradesh and in the Barahoti sectors. As you know, that the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was here in July. He came here in July and they had certain confabulations, the US and India, about the impending US withdrawal from Afghanistan. And they also agreed to meet to formalize the Quad in September in Washington, DC. Now, the Chinese are very good at signaling. So once Blinken left and once the Afghan administration collapsed on August 15th, 2021 in Kabul, the Chinese sent two signals at the end of August. One signal was that they launched this equivalent of a fractional orbital bombardment system, this missile that goes through space and then comes back into the atmosphere and then attacks you. Now, all of the United States anti-missile defense systems are based in Alaska because they expect a threat from the north. Now, this new Chinese system can circle the globe and come and hit them from Florida. So they sent this signal to America, and to India they sent a signal. You guys think that you're big boys, you joined the Quad. They did this intrusion in the Barahoti sector. Now, I remember I have gone on air in a number of programs thereafter, and I've said that the Chinese are going to make this entire LAC active. They are going to make it active and they're going to publicize it because they want to humiliate us, and they feel that we are the weakest link in the Quad, and they have to destroy the Quad and also incapacitate Japan and India in order for them to dominate Asia. And only when they dominate Asia can they project themselves as the #1 superpower in the world, because this is their backyard. Now, if you look at the countries in Asia opposing the Chinese, India, Japan, Vietnam, and Singapore partly, these countries collectively have greater population than China and collectively have a greater GDP than China. So China cannot afford to let Japan and India unite as its enemies on a common platform and confront it. So if you go back to October 2020, open source intelligence reveals that they already came into Samdurong-Chu. I have seen satellite pictures of April 2021 when they came once again into the Arunachal Pradesh area, and now a few weeks ago they've again intruded. So they're going to continue.
In fact, last year they also entered Mansarovar.
Yeah.
Who entered
Mansarovar? They created a village.
Tibet, which is
No, Mansarovar is already within their territory.
That's in
They can do
Tibet
what they like in
already.
Mansarovar.
No, this is what we consider our territory, or rather they created a whole village there.
No, not in Mansarovar. That's in Arunachal Pradesh.
Yeah.
Mansarovar is up
Which
in
is right
Arunachal also. In Arunachal
and it's
also.
right next to our border.
So anyway, let me complete. So my view is that this confrontation and game of brinkmanship is going to continue. You have noticed that they have solidified all their structures in Eastern Tibet. They are here to stay, and they are going to continually test your political will and your resolve. And so therefore, you must have a strategic game plan and a tactical game plan ready on how you're going to confront the Chinese.
Professor Thakur,
I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, please.
I'm sorry to have missed a few of Iqbal's comments, but I would start by agreeing absolutely with him, and in fact, emphasizing the fact that the LAC with China is going to become active on all fronts. And in fact, I'm going to emphasize a bit more the fact that I think India needs to take it very seriously. And I'm sure and I hope that our government is taking it very seriously. Let me come at, substantiate the reason why India needs to take it very seriously from another perspective. One is understanding the changing discourse around war in China under Xi Jinping. And for this, you have to understand the manner in which Xi Jinping is trying to create a special place for himself within that pantheon of communist gods in China. The saying that Xi has appropriated for himself is that Mao made the Chinese people stand up. Tang made the Chinese people rich. Xi is going to make the Chinese people strong. It is this mantle of strong, it's the saying in China now, in which Xi constantly repeats. I mean, I follow him. Then we have all these fan clubs of the, on the internet called the military fanboys, which are also constantly egging and promoting China's military. And Xi has said over and over again, to become a strong country, we need a strong army. It is the military that counts. Now, let us have no illusions as Indians. The Chinese have always claimed all of Tibet. General Pannu was kind enough not to mention the fact that the biggest historical mistake we made after independence was accepting Tibet as a part of China.
Of course.
Once we've done that, once we've done that, we literally cut, as we might say, the ground from under our own feet. But and China is now hell-bent on reclaiming all its lost territories. Xi Jinping's other claim to fame is going to be what he calls the great unity of the People's Republic of China. Keep in mind that the Chinese are a very historically discursive people. For them, dates matter. And this is the 100 years of the
Communist Party of China.
Absolutely. By 2025, she has certain goals. By 2050, she has another set of goals. And within that framework, the great unity of the people, Tathong, as he calls it, is one claim to China having rejuvenated, having become this strong central civilizational power again. The other question I really want to flag, and I think this needs to be constantly reiterated and flagged by our think tank people, and especially our military, is the huge disparity between the weapon systems, at least the way I see it, from the kind of weapons and military modernization that has been taking place in China since 2016. So I think that is a key imperative. The promotion of General Wang Haijiang as the head of the Western Command is very important, because he's a very Xi man, and he was also in charge. He has been in the past in charge of both Xinjiang and Tibet. So I think where I am concerned as a China watcher and somebody who is really watches China from within, as it were, I would take China very seriously. I don't think that India at all can take it lightly, and we must absolutely up in every way our own military modernization.
Thank you, Dr. Thakur. Now, if I may point out, Xi Jinping is also in a not very enviable state of stability in his own party. There's a
No,
lot of rumblings there.
I actually, Colonel Bhatt would not agree with that. She has progressively consolidated power, and he has moved, he has been sort of targeting even those like people like Wang Qishan, who may have earlier been very close to him, who was leader of his anti-corruption campaign. And he is, I think, strengthening his position. If you look at the military changes that he's made, he's recently in July alone promoted 5 new generals. And so I think he's very much consolidating control till 2022, till the next party Congress.
Okay.
We may see a toning down of rhetoric once she is anointed permanent head. But while till the 2022 Congress within China, I think we are going to constantly see Xi trying to prove his credentials as the strongman of China, someone who stands on the podium at the 100-year celebration and says that anybody who tries to destroy China will have their heads banged against an iron wall. I think that rhetoric must be taken seriously.
Hear me now?
Yes.
All of you?
Yes.
All of you. Okay, I'll repeat. We have, I believe, mirrored our deployment. When I say mirrored, means we've faced them with whatever they have, as much as they have all along. And the one thing that I'm very doubtful about is that the actual fighting, will Xi actually put the PLA into a fight? Because considering what happened last year, the kind of response they got to that, to the killing of 20 of our men, and then the kind of shock they got when we occupied Kailash Range. I think she or the Communist Party is going to try in every and any other way, any and every other way to get at us. Of course, they are past masters in projecting. Look at this. This is the most powerful army. In optics, they're great. In propaganda and optics, they're great. General Pannu.
I don't know what game are we talking about. Are we talking about chess or a boxing match? We can win a few rounds of boxing, but I think chess we lost.
Yep.
So wars and battles are a little different in understanding. You win a war through strategy and maneuvers, and you can win battles where the mettle of the soldiers and the junior leaders and the commanding officers and local formation commanders actually are at play. At the end of the day, we need to understand what does China need to achieve as far as pushing India militarily is concerned. And can China achieve it? So far, China cannot achieve. They will keep foxing you around the chess game. And at the end of it, at some point, they would might win a few punches. And that is where they will freeze and display those punches at the victory point. So we need to understand as a nation, we need to come together and not deal in different planes. I think we have to become more monoliths as the PLA and the CMC and the Communist Party of China are together. They're literally playing as a monolith. And we look at diplomats talking a language, sometimes strong and sometimes not so strong. Military will always have a very strong punch, provided there is a diplomatic and the political will. And I think more or less it is there. But the fact is that if we moved out of south of Pegongso, it means there was something that we thought in the chess, it would yield results to us. And as a counter, the Chinese will also move from the other places, which they didn't. So if they didn't, we as chess players did not foresee that their game is a little different than ours, because They have gone into the second season now. We thought it was a game of a season. And if we continue to work season after season, there will be more chesses and more bouts happening on ground. At the end of it, the patience and the time will tell what needs to be achieved here. I think at the moment we are fighting the game of image. Who wants to prove militarily? Unless you can win militarily in a decisive manner, there is no image building happening here. Because if China, as Ravni was saying, that Xi Jinping wants to show to people that China is strong. China can only prove itself strong if militarily it wins something which is credible, worth to go and scare the world to say that don't take us lying down. We are a military superpower and we'll clobber you. Now, is that demonstration going to be held on Indian northern borders or elsewhere? Time will tell us. But if it is going to be proven on our nose or their nose, I suppose we cannot afford it. For us, there is too much of a heavy cost to prove their mettle to the world, to say that they actually knocked India down so that rest of the world starts towing the line. I think for that, we have to be very, very clear that this battle cannot be lost by India, whatever comes militarily. And that is where the image of India is concerned. I think rest, some chess players can handle.
Iqbal. Iqbal,
Yes.
what do you have to say?
On the battle, on the move that Xi Jinping is going to make. You see, I don't think that Xi Jinping is going to get into a kinetic war right now, because at the tactical level, the Indian commanders are far superior to the Chinese tactically. What he will do is to fight us on a different domain and see what kind of provocative response by him is going to elicit what kind of a reaction from us. For example, one thing he could do is that he could knock off one of our very critical satellites in space and see what we are going to do. Secondly, a lot of the new Soviet equipment that are, or rather Russian equipment that we bought from the Russians, all the electronics are Chinese. So, for example, this much wanted and much touted S-400 anti-ballistic missile system has got a lot of Chinese electronics in it, almost 32%. So he can also send an electromagnetic pulse through the back door and immobilize the S-400 system. Or the S-400 system generates a lot of information because it's linked to our AWACS, it's linked to our radar network, it's linked to our satellites. And all of this information in theory and practice is going to be collected by the Russians, because they've created the system and they've got all the keys to it. So tomorrow they can also hack into the Russian command and they can get all this data from them. The third thing that they could do is, again, test us on the ground, or they could, launch a bug into our power grid or our banking grid. They've already done this. A few months ago, they hit the State Bank of India pension fund accounts and they reduced all the balances to zero in the morning. And in the evening, they restored it. So it was a technology demonstrator of what we can do to you. So they will seek to cripple us in a non-kinetic, non-military attack and see how we respond. So what is our response going to be? What is our war game scenario going to be? What is the threshold beyond which we are not going to tolerate such an attack? And how are we likely to respond? These seem to be a very big gray area, because you see, we are the weakest link in the Quad. And if they can exploit this link and they can degrade our commitment to the Quad or our political resolve to confront them as part of the Quad, they will then have achieved what they seek to achieve, is that to denigrate the Quad and to also send the signal to the world that, hey, the Quad is now creaking, cracking, and therefore we will attack and take over Taiwan. Because the affirmation of Xi Jinping's paramount power and his ratification as the leader, as long as he lives, of China, is in his ability to unify all of China's estranged territories, whether they be Taiwan, whether they be what he calls Southern Tibet, which is Arunachal Pradesh, or they be Ladakh. And also, they have built 2 dams on the Indus River near Gilgit, the Dimer Basha Dam and the Bunji Dam, at a cost of $16 billion. And this bankrupt economy of Pakistan cannot absorb the electricity being generated from there, and nor can it pay for it. This electricity is going to go into running the Chinese semiconductor industry, which is now shifting to Xinjiang. And they want the electricity from the water, and they want the physical water as well for their semiconductor industry. So my view is that they are going to test the waters, and they are going to try and see how, whether by hook or by crook, whether by negotiation or as a last resort through some kind of kinetic warfare, push us beyond the Indus River and onto the west bank of the Indus, so that the physical control of the Indus and its tributaries, Nubra, Shyok, Changchemo, and Galwan River, are within their physical control. I mean, you may say that this is far-fetched, and nothing is far-fetched today. Everything is open. You've got to figure out, why have they made these moves on the chessboard? Why have they built these dams? Why have they sent you these signals? Why is unification of China's lost empires so important for Xi Jinping? Because he has to divert attention away from the domestic crisis, where his debt is now 3 times that of the GDP, and people's savings have been wiped out. And therefore, he has to look beyond the borders of China to actually rally the population behind him.
Americans having pulled out of Afghanistan has actually also left a perceptual distaste as far as the Americans' power and future is concerned.
No doubt. No doubt.
And now,
Yeah, now I can hear.
China is more emboldened to sort of call the bluff of the Quad. If they had not pulled out from there and they kept, remaining a strong, credible power, maybe the Quad would have signaled a very kind of a different strength. But the point is, now China is actually going to start looking at calling the bluff of Quad. And to my mind, I think Americans look at Quad very differently. They don't look at it in the realm of war fighting. They would possibly look for an opportunity to sell hardware to India. Now, if that is the kind of thing that the Americans are going to look at, I think Quad in itself is not going to be something. In any case, Indians could have gone and bought equipment from anywhere. But to become captive to a Quad buyer-seller relationship between India and US, I think that is where Iqbal would say that India would not only be the weakest member in the link, but would be further proven to go deep into weakness of this Quad arrangement, because then there's no war fighting. War fighting, you're going to be left entirely independent of what the Quad would do. And as far as forging of the ideas and others are concerned, the Quad has to call the bluff of China in South China Sea. Why Quad countries cannot actually go, they've got huge amount of aircraft carriers. They have just been demonstrating. By now, they should have actually gone and stuck them out, into certain kinetic manner. But on converse, what has happened? That they have pulled out of Afghanistan and shown weakness, not strength. So I suppose it is only for Americans to do one thing. If the weakest or the strongest, or not even in that term, if the strength of the Quad is to be proven, I think it's time for them to strike China in South China Sea. Otherwise, I don't see anything happening out of it. The Chinese will call the bluff out of the
Thank
Quad.
you, General Pannu. Dr. Ravni Thakur, Please.
Yes, General Pannu, that's quite interesting. I personally have a different take on the Quad. If you follow Japanese, domestic media, and given that we're a Department of East Asian Studies, we get a lot of that as well. And also, if you look at the manner in which China itself has responded to the Quad, I actually think A, China is taking it quite seriously, and B, I think America is also taking it seriously. It's certainly true that the basket of armaments and the basket of security that they're offering to Australia and with what is now called the AUKUS, the Australia, Britain, and US, is linked around nuclear power. But actually, where India is concerned, if there is some hesitation on the American side, it is India's own unwillingness. For far too long, India's old diplomatic cadre, India's old political class, and India's leading strategic thinkers have constantly harped on non-alignment 1, non-alignment 2.0. I think India also, given the enormous strategic and hardware strength of China that India is currently facing, must be more upfront about its desire for interoperability within the Quad. If India is seen as a weak link, it's not so much as the weakest in terms of its capacities, but rather because of its own internal domestic and ideological proclivities, which are constantly, on the one hand, trying to build on third worldism, anti-imperialism. All that old discourse needs to be re-examined, and India needs to start approaching its own foreign policy vis-a-vis China, not only to strengthen alliances, because I think these are important, and here I consider Japan a key alliance member. And I would go a little further. I think India has to start playing the role in a certain way that Pakistan played between two enemies where China and the US were concerned. India should bank and capitalize on its old networks within Russia, and create forums and places where Russia and the United States can meet. We need to strategize around China now. Exactly.
I'd like to just add to supplement what Ravni is saying.
Like
important short
China
points.
has.
The point I want to make, Colonel Bhat, is
Yes.
that firstly,
Around
this AUKUS treaty.
I just wonder right now, the French hurt here.
Sorry, I'll just put my words into.
Professor Thakur, I think we lost a little bit of your transmission.
The last point I was making is that strategically we should even be talking bilaterally on the strategic front with France, which also has interest in the Indian Navy. Let us accept the limits of our Western theater now. China has Afghanistan. China will actually not find it easy. America, I think, has done quite well to move out and concentrate on the Pacific. So I think that, we need perhaps to start talking bilaterally with France as well.
Okay.
I think time will tell. I think time will tell if Americans seriously go into the Pacific. Once they go there strongly, we would know.
I'll just make 3 points related to what General Pannu has just said and what Dr. Thakur said.
Yeah, okay.
Firstly, the point is this, that this AUKUS deal, which people are saying that, it's undermining the Quad. This is because the French were unwilling to guarantee supply of remaining submarines and spare parts to the Australians in the event of a conflict with China. And if the Chinese were to place an embargo on weapon sales to Australia, the French were not willing to become the enemies of China and continue to trade and sell spare parts to Australia. So that was very clear. The Australians were saved $90 billion, and the Americans and the British will take time to supply them with submarines. But what they will do is that they will give them on lease their old mothballed submarines, of which the British and the Americans have a few. and till such time as the new submarines come in. So let's be very clear about that. The second thing is, let's see if the Americans put their money where their mouth is. If the Chinese attempt to attack Taiwan, will the US put boots on the ground or will the US engage in a kinetic war with China to defend Taiwan? If the US actually defends Taiwan and if the US actually gets into action with its carrier battle groups to hit the Chinese in the South China Sea, then I can safely say that yes, I will feel reassured that we have got something of a reliable partner in the US. And the third thing that I'd like to say is that what do we need from the US? We don't need military advisors. We don't need US troops on the ground. We need sophisticated communications help. We need sophisticated intelligence help. We need backup help in the space domain so that our satellites are not knocked out of the sky. This is the kind of qualitative input that we need from the US to wage a potential war with China, or stand up and stare China in the eye. As long as we get these three elements from the US, I'm quite happy.
I would agree with you.
Does not Becca cater to all that?
No.
You know, the number of agreements which we have signed with the Americans literally are more to demonstrate strategic partnership. Delivery, a lot of more money is required to be pumped in to extract all that Iqbal is talking about, because tangibles only come through technology, and technology doesn't come without money.
Yeah.
And General Pannu, does it also mean?
Agree with that too.
I agree with
just Professor Thakur,
But
does
at
it
the
also
same
mean that the US will expect us to buy more hardware from them?
Yes.
Yes.
you have an aircraft carrier.
I think Japan and India should actually be talking joint ventures in terms of armament production, quite frankly. This is an idea we've been floating in Japanese think tanks, how India and Japan Japan has cutting edge technology. India has the necessary wherewithal. That is something, if we want to take the Quad seriously, we should get America to sign off on and tacitly start providing that technology. But the other thing is that it's not only, high technology that India is lacking, or it has an asymmetric relationship with China. Even things like tanks, armored trucks, fighter aircraft, rocket projectors, I can go on endlessly. Even those kind of goods, if one might say, that weaponry that is needed on our Western front, we have a tangible asymmetry with China. And I think that is something that at least we must start negotiating immediately to access, create, build, Atmanirbhar, whatever it is that we want. But we need to be ready. I would just finally like to, reiterate, and do what the Chinese have done. Let's now stop fighting a moral war with China. Like General Pannu said, and this is something that I couldn't second more. I think that is fundamentally important for India's further security. This is a war we cannot either lose or even be seen to be losing. And we've got to do everything we can by hook or crook to make sure that we do that, build other alliances, carry out intelligent networks, disturb Afghanistan and Balochistan, create, we've got to start playing the same game that China has played with us always. The Chinese are now, if you look at their internal discourse, the kind of trainings that they are getting out, because China has never fought a war since 78 with Vietnam. They have actually been in active combat. So now all their trainings are actually fight to win, fight to kill, fight to win. There's this constant desire for war that is being trumped up along with nationalism, which is very scary. It's not just what we call wolf warrior diplomacy. It's the kind of propaganda that the Chinese Communist Party propaganda bureaus are creating. This great film, Battle of Lake Changchun, was fully funded by the Chinese Communist Party propaganda department. It's compulsory to go and see it. So they are they're beating the drums of war domestically. They're trying to motivate their youth for, it's all right to fight for your territory. We have the right to fight for our territory. And the think tankers say, use discourse like from, the earlier period, peaceful rise of China. Now you have people like Yan Xietung, who are key strategic thinkers in China, openly saying, what's the point of having power if you're not going to use it? Coupled with this is that whole Belt and Road Initiative, which is allowing China to legitimize the expansion of its strategic motives.
Okay.
Colonel Bhat,
Yes,
I'd like to say something.
Although, certainly, but I'm quite tempted by this. I think an Indo-Japanese weapon may be quite a...
Colonel Bhat,
yes.
General Pannu said that the Quad nations have got a lot of aircraft carriers. The Japanese have got 2 helicopter carriers. They're now converting them into F-35C carriers, which can carry F-35s. We have got a brand new carrier, INS Vikrant, which has been launched for sea trials, and we don't have any planes. It's like the Royal Navy's aircraft carrier that was launched, Queen Elizabeth, without aircraft.
Without
aircraft. So what we need to do is get the F-35 and put it on that aircraft carrier and send that aircraft carrier into the South China Sea along with the Quad navies to demonstrate we mean business. We still haven't got a bloody plane. When are we going to get a plane for that aircraft carrier that is going to actually function?
Yes,
why can't the government take a decision?
Yes. No.
I mean, India has 552 fighter planes compared to China's 1,500 plus. Just to give you a small figure.
But you don't need quantity, because you've got all these standoff missiles now. You can launch them from 100 kilometers away. You don't need to get.
Yeah, but they've got better ones. They've got better ones, Iqbal.
No, but they still don't. They still
Dr.
can't beat our
Thakur,
BrahMos.
BrahMos
is one missile we have which they can't beat.
I'm delighted to hear that. I'm delighted to hear that.
You understand that all the might of Chinese military hardware will not be pumped against India. They have other neighbors and they have other areas to be taken care of. Second thing is, we are talking about between India and China, it is going to be a battle in super high altitude. And you have to have those aircrafts supplied with aerial refueling ability. They don't have the luxury to take off from the mainland China, bring in air refuelers only to make them hit targets in India, which is not going to be easy. So the ratio of hardware is okay, but the area of operations is going to be in favor of India as far as the aerial battlefield is concerned. Right. As far as the missiles are concerned, easier said than done. It takes number of missiles to hit and destroy a target of precision. In Gulf War, Americans actually used media to scare everybody else around that they have got precision strike capability. It was half, not even half, 1/3 of it, but they over demonstrated the capability. The Chinese have not really used their equipment, and they're only struggling basically to get the PLA to understand the new equipment, which is just reverse engineering. None of these doctrines, none of the exercises are based on demonstration, basically to scare the enemy. But the point is that in the second cycle of operation or second season, the PLA is basically hardening the troops, because earlier they used to come on a very short tour of duties because the mothers would cry with one single child having gone for a couple of months. But I think they want to beat that by constantly keeping the PLA soldiers on ground to say that, look, they have understood that now that they are on a familiar ground, as the Indians keep talking about. That Indians talk about the experience in Siachen Glacier, in Kargil. Indians keep talking about the experience in super high altitude. We have mastered the art of foot infantry fighting on the mountains against the mechanized infantry that the Chinese had developed, because they cannot march. They have to come in warm vehicles. They have got good terrain and good
General Pannu, I
infrastructure.
have no doubt about India's capability. I'm sure you know more about the war and how it's fought at high altitude. I'm just bringing to the table the fact that the Chinese have been very, very active in terms of military modernization. And please, let's be aware that today it's no longer a question of, we've all seen those videos of Chinese, a few young soldiers crying on their way to Tibet. But please be very, very sure that that's not the case. The Chinese are today raising battalions on the border that are composed of Tibetan youth. They're raising battalions on the border, similarly with Xinjiang, which they need to do less of. But in Tibet, their forcible conversion of youth, incorporation of youth, etc. I mean, I've visited Tibet twice and I've seen this for myself. Is quite high. I'm not, I wouldn't at all want to argue.
I think we are saying the same
how
thing.
a war is run. I'm just saying that we
Dr.
should
Thakur,
take
we are
what
saying the
China
same thing.
seriously.
We are saying the same thing. I'm saying that
Right.
we are in the second season.
Yeah.
And in the second season, the Chinese are making sure that the PLA is not made of those chocolate babies who were crying in the first season. The second season is different. And you have said it all. So they are now using the constant season after season to season their army to be able to compete and fight in super high altitude areas. Really speaking, you and me are saying the same thing. But well,
Absolutely.
of course, we have been in different domains of experience. So therefore we talk differently, but maybe land up saying the same thing.
Indeed.
Actually, coming to this, when we occupied Kailash range, the Chinese were they were not very happy at all about spending the winter opposite us. And they had a lot of, acquisitions to get into of clothing, habitat material. They had to do a lot of it. And now they must have had to do much, much more to sustain their deployment right up to Arunachal. And so have we.
Colonel Bhat, the Chinese have been in Aksai Chin since 1950.
Yes.
They have been there for 71 years. They've got enough acclimatization. It's their policy of only using voluntary conscripts, for tours of duty like the Americans have. You do a tour of duty. And as General Pannu said, now they're going to extend those tours of duty and repeat them and say, instead of one tour of duty, you do 3 to 4 tours of duty. So you become hardened to the climate. But as far as all the equipment and clothing goes, I think they've been around for a long time. 71 years is
It's
good
like
enough.
in Nakula, I went to the boundary and I chatted with the Chinese soldier who was on the other side. And I asked him that, where are you from? And he told me, that he was from Sichuan. So I asked him, how long have you been at the border? Sichuan is the neighboring province to that area. I said, how long have you been at the border? And he said, 4 years. And I told him, we were speaking in Chinese, and I said, that's a very long time. And he says, in Chinese, very fiercely with his chest all out, that I'm not afraid of the cold. I know this region very well. I'm here to stay. Literally.
Yeah, because he belongs there. You see, some people who belong there would say like this, but
that's what
those who don't
the Chinese are using those people.
Yeah. So those who don't belong there are the ones who we've been talking about earlier, because you don't need to only bring handful of people who are locals. It'll be a large force which will come in there, and I think they are slowly coming to the point that where the military hardware and also the troops are going to be hardened, both of them, and that is a serious concern. Not that Indians are sitting not doing anything, but I think this kind of a confrontation is best avoided because the two strengths will meet. I don't know who's going to land up proving what, but at the end of it, I think the worst thing for the Chinese is to demonstrate their strength, the intent of demonstrating their strength to the globe by attacking Indians. I think that is the worst option that they would pick out. They can pick up something more softer elsewhere to demonstrate the power.
But that is the likeliest option, General Pannu, because
exactly.
They have to
Taiwan is much tougher.
They have to strengthen themselves in Asia. The Indian landmass and the Indian subcontinent is their biggest challenge apart from Japan. It's a technological challenge from Japan and a physical challenge from here, from India. We are a nuclear power. If they have to put us down, what better than to put us down in the eyes of the world?
Yeah, but that's going to take some juice out of them if they're
Yes.
prepared for it.
They are ready for that juice, yeah. They are ready to sacrifice anything.
No, I think Iqbal, the Chinese, the way, whatever I've seen of them, they're very, very shy of their own body bags. They don't want to. They want to avoid any of their own body bags.
That is the discourse that's being changed.
Well,
That is what the propaganda domestically is creating amongst the new generation, this appetite and willingness to die for the country.
well, what kind of country? Because it's a country of suppressed masses.
Oh God, I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But that is precisely why the Chinese Communist Party, to hide.
Yes, of course, the Chinese Communist Party is going to try it's whatever it can.
They don't care, Colonel Bhat. They don't care. They've never cared. Mao Zedong has the glorious distinction of having killed more than 60 million Chinese in the name of his faith. This is a country that has run tanks over its own elite students in the center of its own capital. I was in China in 1989.
And last year,
this is not a country that is scared of body bags. This is not a country that is scared of either its own body bags or that of others.
And also they are good at creating that perception that they're not scared. I think they are also great at hiding the lies and selling the lies to the world. Because it is not a democratic country where opposition parties will go to the television and start talking ill of the government. It is just one party. It is just one party. If you tell the soldier you're ready to die, he's ready to die. What option does he have?
And you have to understand, General Pannu, more importantly, like unlike the armies of America, Japan, India, or Australia, who are there to defend the nation, are there primarily to defend the nation and stand by the constitution. In China, the PLA's first loyalty is not the nation, it's the Communist Party.
To the Communist Party
in the training schools of the PLA, it's not the Chinese national flag that flies, but the CCP flag. And Xi Jinping has reiterated this control of the party over the PLA. All the generals who were asking for a degree of professionalism and independence have been sorted out over and over again.
This is how it has been, and this is how it would be, because there are no traces that anything is
changed a little under Deng Xiaoping. There was a far in almost every element. Deng did, to be fair to him, try and separate the state from government, the military from party, etc., and create a more constitutional boundary for its people to adopt. Unfortunately, after Xi Jinping, that is he's re-emphasized what Deng had in a way put on the back burner. Hence, so there is a huge difference. I sometimes feel that she is priming for war when I see him talking to his troops, when I see the kind of language that he's using. I have not heard a Chinese leader since Mao Zedong use this kind of language.
You certainly must be trying very hard, because so far, it's not been able to, the PLA has not been able to, put any forceful fight right since 1967.
Anyway, I would like to say one thing here, that and endorse General Pannu's earlier comments, that we need to get onto the chessboard. And
actually, we need to get onto a go board. The Chinese
go board or chessboard. We have to figure out
a different
that
tactic.
How do we conduct asymmetric warfare against the Chinese?
Yes.
And we need to publicize that fact in some way, so that the world knows at large, and the Chinese know at large as well, that look, we are capable of conducting asymmetric warfare. and we need to, like termites, get into their society and start eating them from inside. Now, that's not difficult to do, but you need the political will to do it. Secondly, the Chinese are very high on symbolism. Symbolism for them is very important.
Yes,
and
of course.
one of the most vicious and hated people in China, if you look at the past, is a man from Pune called David Sassoon, who was responsible for spreading opium in China and retailing it to the Chinese. So we need to consider creating a new missile or renaming a missile as the David Sassoon missile, so that this is specifically targeted towards China and gives a symbolic message to them. Even though it may sound trivial, but the symbolism is very important for the Chinese.
Anything else? Dr. Thakur, anything else?
No, thank you, Colonel Bhat. Suffice to say that I think, India has a lot on its plate where China is concerned. And I would just say we need to all take it seriously.
No doubt, no doubt. General Pannu, anything more from you?
I think I agree with both Dr. Thakur and Iqbal. We can't just choose to, play a game of our choice. I think the game is already there in front of us. We need to master it all, and not only in first playing it, first understanding what is being played at. If we don't understand it, we will lose it, because then we'll play a wrong game.
No doubt.
I think understand the game, master it, then play it, rather than just trying to serve the time. Nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to be proven in short while, except a few border skirmishes here and there. I think we have no option but to become strong. And that's the only option. Otherwise, we have China as a neighbor. We can't change it, and we have to live with our weakness if we don't eradicate
it. I think I must thank you all for making this a really lively discussion, and in which I think we all come out with some very significant, very important points which need to be taken note of. Some have been, probably taken note of, but there are more that need to be taken note of. Thank you very much.
Nobody is listening. Nobody is listening to
us. The
us.
Chinese will be listening. You can be
Chinese will be listening, but nobody else is listening here, because their thought pattern is governed by other factors. It's not governed by this perception of this ginormous threat that we are facing. If they were listening, we would be on a different trajectory today rather than the one that we are on now. And even the trajectory that we are on today is because we are forced onto it. No other reason.
Indeed, I would like to second that.
You have brought it out, Iqbal. We can't doubt that. All we can do is that we can hope that that we learn without paying for it. Learn in time. That's all.
Colonel Bhat, in 1962, when I was 6 years old, I used to listen to the radio with my grandmother at 7 o'clock, the Akashvani Doordarshan, not Doordarshan, Akashvani All India Radio, on the news about the battle, the war in 62. Yes. And now we are in 2021 and we are still talking about war.
I was in class 6 in 1962 and my father was very, impressed that I started reading the newspaper after that, because otherwise one was only interested in sports and, film pages in the newspaper. I also had a brother who was in the Indian Military Academy at that time. And, he passed out 6 months earlier. In December 62, the 22nd NDA and 31st regular, passed out with only 6 months in IMA. Anyway, gentlemen, we've brought out a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, Colonel Bhat. A great pleasure.
Thank you, Colonel Bhat.
Thank you,
Thank you, Dr.
Colonel
Thakur.
Pannu,
Thank you,
pleasure to meet you.
Iqbal.
Bye, Iqbal. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.